It is very hard, and I'm like, I was gonna make the joke: is Hyperlight Breaker the Dark Souls of roguelike games? And the answer, man, I think is yeah.
It's because it's just that unrelenting.
What is up, gamers and roguelite fans, and welcome to Game Gems, the show where we go hands-on with the latest cool, small, hidden gem video games and give you our initial impressions. Today we're checking out Hyperlight Breaker, the open-world roguelite from Heart Machine. I am Christian Macias, and joining me once again, video lead Peter Hunt Spitek. Peter, you ready to explore the overgrowth?
Of course I am. I'm trying to think if I could, like, if I had like a cyberpunk nickname, like what it would be.
Choom?
But I'm coming up with nothing. Choom's not bad, but I feel like that's what you just call everyone, right? Like,
And that's what you are to me.
it's like everyone's
You're
a
my
Choom.
Choom.
Yeah, right back at you, brother. So tell me about this game. Yeah.
Real quick, before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of what Hyperlight Breaker is, it is half roguelite, half extraction shooter. And the best pitch I can give you is, we're going to take a look at what starting a run looks like. Not from the get-go, but when you first get into, here's the kind of setup city. There is a lot of divisiveness around this game, which is going to be a lot of what today is going to be like. Again, not a review, hands-on impressions with the game, but it all stems sort of here. This is the meta progression system of the game. A lot of people have issue with. I wanted to highlight healing in this game is much different than anything I've kind of seen before. It is an unlock you have to get through a ticket system, and the ticket system only happens once you complete a run and lose all your lives. We'll get into that in a second. And the only way to complete a run in the early game is to fail. So I did some editing here. Here's what the end of a run looks like. You have to buy your way into a new world, and you get this rank score. And the rank contributes to your larger progression. So the only way to unlock healing is to fail, and then unlock healing. We're going to get much more into that, but I wanted to just throw you out the pitch that this game is in early access, and they're tinkering with the systems. And as of right now, people are not happy with the way the setup of the game is.
Sure. Okay. So did you play the original? What was that, Hyperlight Drifter?
Yes.
Or Breaker? This is Breaker? The first was Drifter? This
is Breaker. The original is Drifter. That was a kind of 2.5 pixel roguelite. This is technically a prequel to that game, but very much in the same vein of, like, they want to focus on difficult combat. But the way you do that in this game is through these degrading upgrades that you can either buy from these shop vendors or find out in the open world. They all have their own rarity, and they have their own degradation. So you can unlock, you can get different swords, different armor, different guns, and prepare to go out for a run.
Interesting. So, okay, so in order to heal, like you said, you have to, like, fail, I imagine, several times, right? You're not unlocking heal on the first run, or?
Well, you would not be even able to do that, because you would have to. So every run, you get 4 lives. And once you lose all those lives, you then go into another run. The cycle finishes, and you enter a new cycle. And it's a procedural generated world, open world. And so you would have to lose all those 4 lives and then enter your second cycle. Hopefully you did well enough on your first cycle to then unlock a golden ticket, or sorry, not a golden ticket. That's a Wonka thing. A ticket, and then buy upgrades. We're gonna get into the mechanics of healing in a little bit, the system of healing, because it's actually more complicated than that. But
that's so interesting.
We'll get there when we get there. For now, let's see what Hyperlight Breaker actually looks like. So we're in the overgrowth, and immediately there's already an inundation of enemies, which is kind of a thing with this game. There's enemies nonstop.
Huh.
And I will say, it seems like the game is very much tuned for co-op play.
Okay.
You can play with up to 4 different people. Sometimes, and I've played with one public lobby, and I did get some sort of performance issues there. There's been some lobby issues, but you know, it's the first week of early access. We'll give them some time. Solo is very hard, and I'm like, I was gonna make the joke: is Hyperlight Breaker the Dark Souls of roguelike games? And the answer, man, I think is yeah.
It's because it's just that unrelenting. So you know how like sometimes you'll play a co-op game like this and they will retune like enemy aggression or even like just like enemy frequency and stuff like that if you're playing alone versus like playing with a group. Is that something in this game, or is it like the same exact experience alone as it is with people?
It is from what I have felt and what I have seen and I have read. Specifically, I watched SkillUp's video and I read Rock Paper Shotgun's review of early access, and they all felt the same, that it's the frequency of enemy spawns is kind of unrelenting. You get some downtimes like this where you can have a couple of 30 seconds ish to breathe, but a lot of the game is exploration to find these prisms, and prisms, if you collect enough of them, unlocks a boss. You have to defeat 3 bosses to then get to the ultimate boss of the game, which is I think the Abyssal King.
Okay.
And each boss, the first boss requires 2 prisms to unlock. The second is 4, and the final is 6. So there's 3 open world bosses, right? To get these prisms, sometimes you'll have to defeat mini bosses, and during these mini bosses, when you get little menu indicators like this that cover up part of the screen, which means either an environmental hazard or enemies are spawning, and they spawn literally right next to you. So it can be kind of unrelenting.
Yeah. Does it like, so the combat looks pretty fluid and looks like you've got a handful of different like abilities sort of at your disposal. Does it feel good? Does it feel like, okay, enemies show up and you're like ready, or are you kind of like playing from backcourt when they jump you?
I will say the former. It feels good, but with most things about this game so far, every yes comes with a but. So every answer that I'm going to have for you now right now is yes, but. The sort of gameplay loop that the game wants you to do is to parry attacks, right?
Okay.
And there are some pretty good indicators for when enemies are going to do some of those. Not all of them, but I'd say most of them will give you a good indicator for when you're about to get hit, and you can parry. The issue here, though, is that most encounters are these sort of mobs that surround you.
Yeah,
and they will non-stop attack. And if you parry, you will most likely get hit from one of these surrounding attacks. So these strategies so far in the first week of early access has been mostly to evade rather than to parry, because it's not worth getting hit. Because when you do get hit in this game, it's pretty monumental. And with little healing, every single hit that you take is a big one. There's a second but coming, in that if you just notice now, when you do a heavy attack, which feels good and looks good, the sort of most of the time, you don't stagger some of the enemies. So they'll attack through your heavy attack, and you'll take a significant chunk of damage.
So, I mean, that sounds, to me, hearing that makes me think like, okay, well, hopefully it feels like intentionally designed to be like that. Does it feel like it's intentionally challenging, or does it feel like it's just fucking hard?
No, I think that's the thing, right? Like Hyperlight Drifter was a challenging game as well, and Breaker is the exact same vein. It just feels like they overtuned just a little bit. They haven't found the sweet spot. And like, that is the point of early access, right? To fine tune these things, and by the time 1.0 is ready, you have a game that's in a better state. Because I think the framework of the game is really good. It's just a bit too hard for difficulty's sake. Like, even in a boss room, you have these dogs spawning in, right? We're doing our first boss attempt. And the mobs are sort of non-stop spawning during a boss encounter. So much to the point where, like, when I'm just trying to engage the boss, mobs will spawn near me and will interrupt, my flow of either combat or dodging.
Yeah, this actually looks like a lot. like this looks like a lot to juggle. Huh. It seems fluid though. I mean, you're quick on your feet at the very least, but Yeah, and here's more guys too, and like dogs over there. Jeez.
Yeah, and so I just used, that was the first time in this edit that I used my one med kit. You get one per cycle, but I'm gonna have to explain to you how this works because it's a resource. This game is very resource heavy. You go out into the wild to either find better loot, like like I said before, your weapons, your guns, what have you. But you also want to be looking out for these resources, like to go back to the open world to either trade to vendors for upgrades, or resources to trade in for a single med kit. You can unlock a second med kit, but it is way like deep into the meta progression.
Yeah.
As of right now. And when you die, here's the thing. Each degradation point will go down -1, which is interesting, right? So you want to be having successful runs where you don't lose your valuable gear. You want to set yourself up for success by extracting. And that's the one thing about this game, right? I think the early game, if you're playing solo, is the strategy is to do very short runs. You go down a single lane to maybe grab 2 or 3 things, extract, and then come back in, hopefully without losing a life. So the setup for getting better at this game is to be very patient and very slow and methodical about how you explore this one open world, which again, there's been some divide on the open world exploration. Some people have called it lackluster. And to me, it is maybe a bit antithetical to sort of like most other roguelites where you feel like you're progressing with the game. This feels like you're trying to avoid the game getting harder for as much time as possible.
It's okay. I'm gonna be honest with you. To me, this game sounds dense. Like it sounds like there is a lot to understand about it to the point where like every single time you're like, okay, so let me explain. Like, I gotta explain to you how healing works, and it's like, yo, that seems like you have to explain how healing works. You have to explain how this works.
The game doesn't explain
really?
that to you, by the way. So there's some issues with onboarding as well. You kind of have to figure it out or read, Reddit posts about how it works.
Yeah.
So much so that Heart Machine put out a 4-thread tweet explaining how healing works.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. So like that's not necessarily bad if this is your sort of thing, but like it sounds like you have to know what you're getting into.
Exactly.
And that you've got some homework to do, and you're not gonna maybe just be able to just sit down and play this.
Yeah. I'm harping a lot on the game, but it comes from a place of, I think, well intent, because so much of the framework of this game like is really good, especially like how visually strong some of it. Like, sure, maybe not as striking as the original Drifter or maybe even Solar Ash, but even like still like hoverboarding around, we got that beautiful sunset here. Like, this game looks good and can feel good a lot of the time. There's just some tweaks to get it from an okay initial release to something that's a lot stronger.
Sure. So like, how do you feel about it in general then? Like, are you pretty positive on this thing, or where are you falling with this?
I'm hopeful. I'll put it that way. I'm positive, but it's just not in it's just not in a state right now that I like feels good in the like moment to moment action. Like here's another example. Like, a lot of the exploration in this game is locked behind these key. You have to find a key to like unlock areas, to even find a prism. But keys are like pretty sparse in the overworld. Like, I've only found maybe 2 keys ever. And some keys, as far as my understanding goes, are you have to find a vendor out in the overworld, right, to then buy a key. But some vendors are behind areas that require a key. So it's these kinds of tweaks that I think keep the game from being, as good as it can be for an initial release. Or initial early access release, excuse me.
Dude, I'm gonna be real with you. This sounds like homework. Like, this sounds like a lot. Okay, so you played the first one. I've not played the first one. Is there like DNA shared between the two? You know what I mean? Is this an easy recommend for people who liked the first one, or is it a little bit more complicated than that?
yes,
Or is it
but
another yes, but? Okay, yeah, there it
it is
is.
a yes, but because the DNA of what Heart Machine does is fluid the DNA here is like parry, dodge, go in for an attack, dodge again. Like that core DNA is still there, and you can feel, and it feels good. Like when it's clicking, that flow is so good. It's they know how to do combat, but again, it's just the tweaks surrounding, enemy free. Like look at, here's one mini boss, and I've gotten like 2 or 3 little
like
indicators
2 mobs,
so far.
yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm like, just so trying, much.
It's a lot, right? And so for some people, that is the major draw, where like you have to lock in.
Yeah, it's a video game panic attack, dog.
Yes, for real. But for a lot of like solo players, you might not feel that sort of cathartic energy.
Yeah. So did you have a better time with it? Not better time, but like, should this be played with other people?
Yes, but
okay, and there it is.
Early access performance issues and server issues. Yeah. So I got some good gear here, and I got some collectibles. I'm gonna upgrade my armor here, which is very much needed. And I found this vector hammer, a submachine gun, and I got some heavy armor. We're gonna go back and try that boss, which I forgot to mention. Right now, the game will say that there are 3 bosses, and then there's the 4th boss out in the overworld, but there's actually only 2 bosses in the game so far, and not even the final boss. The final boss is not in the game yet. That's
just because it's early access.
Correct.
Got it. Huh.
So here's me trying the hammer before a boss fight, which maybe wasn't the best idea because I ended up losing a significant amount of health.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So you've got these like 5 pips right here. Do they recharge if you don't take damage for a second? Like to the bar. Do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Got it.
So that depends on the perks that you find. Some of them will like give you like more pip. Some of them will give you pip back for like pairing successfully. Just depends on the build.
Gotcha. And then how's that gun? I've seen you pull that out every so often. Oh no.
The guns don't necessarily feel like very impactful.
No.
The most use that I get out of them is to interrupt flying enemies or like snipers. That way they don't shoot at me when I have mobs surrounding me, and then I can close the gap in. Otherwise, I try. You don't get a lot of ammo anyway.
Oh really? Oh, there's like ammo and all that. That's
yeah. You maybe get like 2 or 3 clips when you get in, and you have to like find ammo by by breaking boxes and stuff. But again, they feel more like interrupters rather than like actual like damage.
Yeah. So this guy, like, you are getting your clock cleaned right now, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah, dude.
Like
absolutely.
Like, have you been able to beat this first boss yet? No. Okay.
And this is actually the first time I saw this boss. Usually I was getting he's like a dog, and the dog, I swear, has an attack that is you can't dodge. I swear, no matter what I do, the AoE always hits me, and it happens so fast.
Okay, and then so how about like how long is it taking you between this guy kills you? How long does it take to get back to be able to like try him again? Is it pretty quick, or is it like you're gonna have to do like a full?
No, it takes a long time. You have to wait through a loading screen. You're back at the base. You have to go through upgrade to the shops if you need to. You'll spawn near the nearest shrine that you like recently unlocked or interacted with, which could be close, could be far. It's all procedural generated after all. And you have to hope that you have the same gear that you like went into the first attempt and can try again. So it can be as fast as 2 or 3 minutes. It can be as long as like 10 to 15 minutes before you attempt again. Just varies.
Oh, okay. And so this is one of the 3 like main bosses, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so I guess it does make sense that it might take a second to get through them, but still, like, this seems. I said this before, I'll say it again. This seems like a lot, and like this would stress me out, I think.
So the game is a roguelite, but if I'm being honest, like the pitch of the game really is like this is an extraction game.
Interesting.
With roguelite, background. It is 100% the patience. You're gonna sit down and go for a cycle, which could be as low as 4 runs and as high as like 8 to 12 runs, and might be like an hour and a half game time session, and you might not even clear 1 or 2 of the bosses.
Huh. Does it feel like you're inching forward though? You know what I mean? Like with the, gear that you find in perks or skills or whatever that you're acquiring and stuff like that, or not really?
I will say no, but on this one, because I've put about 6 hours in the game, and so far my meta progression has been 1 med kit, and I have 2 upgrades. Each of them gives me half a second longer for either my glide or my hoverboard, which does nothing for me in terms of like survivability.
That's nothing. It's nothing,
exactly,
Christian. That's nothing.
And the other upgrades that I found is 5 more health, the armor that you saw me get, and then I've got 2 of upgrades into my attacks.
Huh.
All this to say, Peter, Hyperlight Breaker, good game, but still needs some work in early access for me to be fully recommending it and for it to be the state that I'm hopeful that it'll end up being in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's good about early access, though, is like, it can get better from here, and I imagine will, because obviously they're putting the time into fine tuning it and tinkering with it and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Folks, that was Hyperlight Breaker, and that is this week's Game Gems, #GGGG. Let us know what you think of Hyperlight Breaker down below. For all things Extraction Roguelite, make sure you stick with the gamer.